Hello, Wonderhussy here, out in the middle of nowhere, Utah. I've been traveling around they call it the West Desert, I think. It's like the northwestern chunk of Utah is one giant desert, and it's full of fascinating stuff, like the place I am right now. Okay, I just parked here at the edge of the vast Great Salt Lake at the site of another one of them large-scale earth artworks, Spiral Jetty. You can probably see, for an earth artwork, it's surprisingly popular. I was hoping there wouldn't be this many people out here, but it is a Saturday. What are you going to do? Anyway, Spiral Jetty, one of them famous earth artworks that were, I guess it was kind of a movement in the late 60s, 70s. This was built in April 1970, and this is probably the best known large scale, I guess they call it land art, earth art, by a guy named Robert Smithson. And well, what's interesting about Robert Smithson is I've actually mentioned him in a video before. I made a video where I went to this other large scale earthwork called Double Negative out in the desert north of Vegas that was built by a dude named Michael Heiser, who I guess was kind of frenemies with Robert Smithson. And then, just the other day, I went to another large-scale art piece in the desert called Sun Tunnels that was made by a woman named Nancy Holt, who was Robert Smithson's wife. What a small world. The large-scale land art community is a tight-knit one, I guess. Anyway, I am going to go down there and check out the spiral in a minute, but there's this really cool informational sign up here on the hill, and well, you get such a nice overview from up here that I feel like this is the best place to really start my video. Matter of fact, there's a little trail here that goes even higher. Let's see if we can get the best view possible of Spiral Jetty. Okay, so you might be able to see there's actually people walking out on the Spiral Jetty. You can walk out on it, and I think if you follow the entire spiral from end to end, it's something like 1,700 feet. And what's really interesting is, I guess when he built it, when Robert Smithson built this back in April of 1970, this whole area was actually underwater. I mean, you might not realize that the Great Salt Lake actually shrinks and expands fairly regularly depending on precipitation, I guess. In case you didn't know, the Great Salt Lake is what's called a terminal lake or an endorheic lake, meaning that, well, it's an inland sea that's fed by streams, but it has no outlet anywhere. So the only way it loses water is by evaporation. So all these beautiful mountain streams coming out of, there's a bunch of mountains to the east of here. All these streams feed the salt lake and deposit all kind of minerals and salt into it. And then it, just the water evaporates, leaving all those salts and minerals in the lake. And that's what makes it, so salty. But what's interesting is this part of the Great Salt Lake is even saltier than the other half of the Great Salt Lake, or not even half. If you look at an aerial view of the Great Salt Lake, it's pretty obvious. It's kind of cut into two parts, two unequal parts of totally different colored water. And that's because man, in all his infinite wisdom and folly, built a causeway across the Great Salt Lake back in 1950 for the railroad. Because I guess, the Transcontinental Railroad ran just right behind us here. In fact, this is where the golden spike was placed, the final spike in the railroad that connected the tracks coming from the east with the tracks coming from the west. You might have read about that, and there's a whole really cool museum and visitor center, and I just made a whole video about that. Very interesting, and that's just right up the road here. But apparently that grade on that railroad was really difficult for most locomotives to make. It was really steep. Whatever the case, they had to build this thing called the Lucin Cutoff, which cuts right across the dang Salt Lake. They had to build this causeway, and I guess there's only a few places in the causeway that allows water to pass through. So consequently, this part of the lake, I guess, just gets even saltier than the rest of the lake, which causes it to have this, if you ask me, it looks just kind of like a muddy brown color. But I guess according to the artist who built Spiral Jetty, it was like this reddish color of blood. And he also appreciated the fact that, you might be able to see over there's some old rotting, dilapidated pier, and then some sort of general crumbling infrastructure in the area. Anyway, Smithson just sort of liked the general air of decay here, I guess, and the fact that the water, the mud, was the color of blood. And he was really into the concept of entropy, if you know what that is, and watching his artwork decay. So I guess he didn't want it to be preserved in any way. Like, that was part of it for him, to see the lake take back over it. And well, what's interesting is, depending on the level of the lake, sometimes the jetty is visible and sometimes it isn't. And I guess, I don't know if it has anything to do with the historic drought we've been in lately, but apparently this jetty has been the most visible it's ever been since the early 2000s. You know what I mean? Like, it's visible pretty much clear as day right now. And I guess that really wasn't always the case. So when Smithson built this thing, like I said, I think it was, I don't know if it was fully submerged or mostly submerged. Anyway, let's go walk out onto it. But let's walk and talk, because I have more to tell you about Spiral Jetty and the Great Salt Lake. I was actually hoping to camp out here tonight. I mean, I guess you're allowed to camp in the parking lot, but well, I didn't really want to camp with a bunch of people around me. So I was kind of hoping I'd be able to find like some little side road and some isolated spot to camp. But that doesn't appear to be the case, because the way you get out here is you follow this really long gravel road out to the middle of nowhere. And there's signs on both sides of the road the whole way. No trespassing, both sides of the road. And it's just barren land. It's not being used for anything. But apparently the sign says I can't camp here. So I'm going to have to figure something out before it gets dark. Unfortunately, we're going to be walking right into the sun, so it might make it a little bit difficult to see what's going on here. Apparently, he built this thing just out of rocks, mud, and I think it said rocks, mud, and crystals. Some kind of salt crystals, probably from the Salt Lake. And when I say he built it, I actually mean he hired a local guy, I think a local contractor, to come in with a bulldozer and basically just shove all these rocks into a special line, which I'm sure the contractor was probably like, okay, whatever, I mean, your money's green. And then I guess after the guy built the first version, Smithson went up in a helicopter and looked down and didn't really like the way it was laid out, so they had to start over and do it over again. Can you imagine? But I mean, I guess he was paying the guy both times. And you might be wondering, where did he get his funding? Well, it wasn't federally funded, so you can calm down right now and get your panties out of a twist. This woman named Virginia Dwan, D-W-A-N, she was the heiress to the 3M fortune, you know, like 3M Scotch tape. Well, she funded a bunch of art projects. She funded Michael Heiser's Double Negative. She funded this really cool light sanctuary in New Mexico that I went to once. Basically, she was just a patroness of the arts, and she's the one who funded this, so I guess she was paying the guy with the bulldozer. She bought this little piece of land, which I'm not sure how far this little piece of land goes, and I sure would like to know, because I want to know where I can camp. But anyway, like one of the articles I was reading said, if it wasn't for Scotch tape, there would be no Spiral Jetty. Okay, look, we're actually walking out on the jetty right now. Doesn't look very impressive from ground level. You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things best appreciated from above. And, well, if there weren't so many dang people here and it wasn't windy, I'd fly my drone. And that was another reason why I was hoping I could camp here, because then I could wait until, you know, usually when the sun goes down, the wind dies down, and I could get a really cool overhead view of this jetty. But for now, you're just gonna have to enjoy my 5'3" view of what it looks like from the ground. Now, you know, I could walk around the whole spiral until I got to the very middle, but I just sort of feel like A, it'd be boring, B, I don't have that much daylight left, and I do still need to figure out where I'm gonna camp, and C, well, I just feel like the time that I have here would be better spent going out to check out the shore of the Great Salt Lake. I mean, you can see the water there in the distance twinkling, so it's not that far. Oh wow, look at all these salt crystals built up. I'm gonna step on them. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that. Oh wow, look, it's wet underneath. Okay, that's why I'm wearing these waterproof hiking boots. I don't have my galoshes with me, and I really don't want to get my feet all salty and funky. But wasn't that a great sound for my ASMR viewers? Those of you who like ASMR, I'll do it again. Oh man, that's a great sound. Now, as we're walking out here, remember, this all used to be underwater. Remember, the Spiral Jetty itself was, I think, mostly underwater when he first built it. So I guess that's why the ground here is so mucky and muddy and well, wet, because it's basically probably going to be underwater again as soon as this dang drought is over. Although who knows, like, well, I was reading up on the Salt Lake, and you know, Utah was settled by Mormons, and Mormons are very industrious, and they believe it is their God-given mandate to green the desert. So again, if you look at an aerial view of Great Salt Lake and the Great Salt Lake area, it's very green and lush over on the east side where Salt Lake City is. There's all kind of farming and agriculture, and it's very pretty and orderly and green. But over here on the west side, north side, it's pretty much just a briny wasteland, which is why I'm surprised that guy was so protective of his property. Like, it didn't look like he was doing anything with it anyway. Ooh, look at this. Talk about briny. That almost looks like a puddle that has frost on top of it, you know, like ice. But it's not. Oh my God, look, it's just salt. But anyway, going back to what I was saying about how nice and green it is over on the east side of the lake. Well, apparently the levels of this lake do rise and fall depending on stuff like snow melt, you know, the streams that feed the lake. Well, I guess back in the 80s, they had a big snow year and the lake went up to its highest level ever. In fact, it got so big that it started threatening all kinds of people's private property, and it even started threatening the berm that Interstate 80 is built on. Interstate 80 runs just south of the Salt Lake by the Bonneville Salt Flats and all that. Well, I guess the lake got so big it started to threaten that, and so they had to do something. And again, once again, man in his infinite wisdom and folly devised this pumping system. So they pumped a ton of water out of the lake into the surrounding desert. And well, now the lake's really, really low, and I'm not sure anybody's complaining about that. I think they are. I think, well, believe it or not, the Great Salt Lake, it's too salty for fish, but there are certain things that are able to be harvested out of it, like brine shrimp, which are essentially sea monkeys. Those are harvested and used as fish food and sea monkeys. And then, of course, a lot of minerals are extracted from the Great Salt Lake. There's a huge magnesium plant kind of down by the Bonneville Salt Flats that produces something like 14% of all the magnesium in the entire world. Isn't that wild? So magnesium, and then, of course, salt. Tons of salt is extracted from the Great Salt Lake, but not table salt, because I guess for it to be consumed by humans, it would have to be refined too much. It'd be too expensive. So they just use it for, like, the salt that they use to put on roads when it snows, and like salt licks for animals, like industrial applications for salt. So I guess maybe like big salt and big magnesium and big brine shrimp maybe had something to say about them pumping all that water out of the lake. And well, I'm not sure what the status of the pump is today, but well, it looks like they pumped out enough. Oh, well, look at this. It's like this weird salty crust that's like coming up in, oh wow, it's almost like a piece of glass. It's hard. Oh my word. Or it's like sugar when you do that, make that stuff for gingerbread houses. Wow. Oh wow, look at the ground here. Sorry, I don't mean to be ADD, but wow, look at all these salt crystals. This is really hard and shiny. And then look at these weird bubbles coming up. These little salt poofs. These are basically little salt hillocks. Oh, it's hard. I thought it was going to be like a soft, movable pile of salt, but no, man. These are like salty speed bumps. We could step right on them and do them no harm. Wow. Surreal. Wow, look at this. This is so surreal. And you can see, or maybe you can see, the water is red when you get up close to it. That's funny because it didn't look red at all from up top there. Good thing we decided to walk down and see for ourselves. Oh my God, look. It's like a salt tumbleweed. Oh, that must be foam or something. Blowing off of the... Oh, here's another one. This one got caught up against one of those little salt hummocks. Let me see what it is. Oh, it's foam. It's just foam. Look at that. Salty foam. What a strange place. Oh my word. This is really, without a doubt, one of the weirdest natural landscapes I have ever personally witnessed. I mean, so you can kind of see the reddish water blows up here, and then it sort of dries out and peters out into this weird, salty mass of quivering foam. Oh my goodness, look at the way that stuff is quivering and moving. And then every once in a while a piece gets blown loose like a little snowball and goes rolling across the desert. Wow, you can kind of see the whole mass is moving. Oh my god, this is just so weird. Man, as tempting as it is to jump in here and wallow around in this foam, I don't think I would want to do it. Because, I mean, it's essentially just a big chunk of salt. And like, when I picked it up before, I noticed, you know, even after it blew away, my hand is covered with this grainy, nasty salt now. I'm very tempted to lick my hand, but I just feel like it wouldn't be advisable. But now I need to clean my hand off, and I don't want to wipe it onto my clothes or any other part of my body. Maybe I can try rinsing it off in the lake. I mean, surely it can't get any worse. Famous last words. Oh my god, there's hardly any water in here even to get it off. Oh my god, the whole bottom is just like solid, hard salt crystals. I don't know if you can see that. Like you can't even like chip at it. It's solid. Anyway, this is it. The Great Salt Lake of Utah. Up close and in person. You've probably seen it on the TV. I don't know if you ever saw this weird quivering foam or that weird pink water, but it's just beautiful. Look at it. It's so twinkly and sparkly from all the salt crystals, and it's kind of that weird blue color. Oh, what an epic, epic place. I can't imagine what the first white people who saw it thought, though. I mean, apparently the Native Americans obviously lived in this area, and they had a different name for it. Surprised they didn't call it Great Salt Lake. But they had one of the tribes had a name in their language that meant something like bad water, because obviously they knew they couldn't drink the water. But they would still hang out and, I'm not sure, do what on the edge. They'd go down to where the streams fed into it, so they had clean water from the streams, good drinking water. I don't know if they harvested brine shrimp or what. It seems to me, if I was them, I would have just stayed up in the mountains. But anyway, then come along the first white people. I mean, they must have really blown their minds. And then the first Mormons that decided to settle this area. I can't imagine what they were thinking. Isn't that a bunch of dead bugs? Like, yeah, they're all... Maybe it's too salty for the bugs even. Ugh. Oh, look, there's even like a dead cricket or something. Some kind of little locust or something. What a post-apocalyptic mess of a scene. Dead crickets surrounded by dead fly larvae on this bed of crusted salt. Wow, there's a ton of those crickets all through here. Yikers! Hopefully I got here just after they were in season and they won't be bothering me wherever I camp tonight. Okay, speaking of camping, there's still like 6-7 other cars in the parking lot. And yeah, they all look like day trippers. There's no like RVs or vans or anything. But you never know. Because I also read about this on freecampsites.net, actually, my favorite website for looking up places to camp. It got mixed reviews. Like, a couple people have said that rowdy kids came in late at night and were drinking and carrying on. I guess like local farm kids or whatever come out here. And it is Saturday night, so I definitely don't want to camp in the parking lot. Okay, we're coming back up on the Spiral Jetty, and I suppose since I'm here anyway, we might as well walk to the very center of it. Pretty impressive, huh? Hey man, it's in the eye of the beholder. But it is kind of interesting to think, like, while we're standing here in the middle of this giant spiral earthwork, what do you think the artist was trying to say about this, or trying to say with this? I mean, yeah, like I said earlier, he was into the concept of entropy and watching stuff decay. So I guess that was it, but why a spiral, you know? And why this particular shape of a spiral? What does it mean? Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Or maybe it means everything. Or maybe it just means what you want it to mean. Okay, well, like I said, I don't really want to camp in the parking lot. So I'm gonna cruise down. The only other kind of like side road that I saw that wasn't marked no trespassing looks like it goes right down to the shore of the lake. Okay. I think I can camp here. Oh my god, look at these little salt crystals. They look like popcorn. Oh my god, especially this time of day with the light like that. That's wild. That looks like modern art. Let me snap a pic. Oh my god, I bet they're awesome to step on. And it feels as amazing as it sounds. Oh my god, look at the sole of my flip-flops now. I'm just trying to get close to this buoy. Wow, that's what that is. I mean, I guess this is a reminder of, or a remnant of when the lake level was a bit higher. Holy cannoli, look how corroded and rusted that thing is from all the salt. Kombucha. So I kind of just tucked myself back onto this little point here, looking out over this vast, post-apocalyptic, but strangely beautiful, well, lake view. And it's crazy because I'm really not that far from Spiral Jetty. Well, I survived. It was actually a very, very calm, quiet, peaceful night. Nobody showed up at all night long. Got up to pee and looked up at the sky, and the Milky Way was unbelievable. And then I got up to pee again a little bit later, and the moon was up, and the whole weird, I don't know what you would call this, lake shore shallows were glowing. It's actually a really, really, really cool place to camp, and I would totally camp here again. Didn't even smell bad, despite the fact that there's a dead stork, or I guess it's maybe an avocet, laying in the ditch right next to me. And then I even got up first thing this morning, like 7 my time, 8 o'clock this time, and there was still nobody here. So I took advantage of that to fly my drone. I flew my drone over Spiral Jetty, which isn't very far from where my campsite is. And it was cool, man, because no one was around. I was just standing there in my in my underwear and my little sleep shirt, flying my drone around. But then, well, of course, the dang drone crashed way over by the Spiral Jetty. So there I was running across the Great Salt Lake in my panties to retrieve my drone before anybody showed up. But nobody showed up. In fact, nobody really showed up here till pretty late, maybe 10 o'clock. I guess it's a Sunday morning, so all the good, God-fearing folk of Utah are all at church today, and then all the non-God-fearing heathen folk that are traveling through, we're all probably too hungover from whatever they did on Saturday night. So I had this whole place to myself for at least a few hours, and it was epic. I know it's not what most people picture when they imagine camping on the shore of a lake, but to me, there is a really surreal, minimalist beauty here. And I can say for certain that I would definitely camp here again.